All right, so we're looking at week 10 now. So we're going to be starting Unit 6. Unit 6 is going to get us into something that we call list. So this, I would say, it's not the easiest thing for you guys to learn online, but we're going to do our best to try to get through this. So the idea here, right? Obviously, we're not in class together. I can't do this activity with you, but if you were in class, we would have our post-it notes, right? So we can write values on them. We would have our large Ziploc baggie, but we'd also have a bunch of smaller Ziploc baggies, and I'll show you why in a second. So this is, again, just how code.org does it. It's kind of a visual to help you see this concept that we're trying to teach you. So just kind of play along with this part. The idea here is we've been working with variables, right? We also introduced conditionals, we introduced functions, but I've been saying the whole time that a variable can only hold a single value, right? So that value could be a string, it could be a number, or it could be a Boolean, true or false. Right, so when we first started talking about variables, we had the large Ziploc baggie. We would give the name to our variable, right? In this case, it's just my name, and then the value that we have assigned to this my name variable is Jose. So you should at this point know this var keyword is what we use to create a variable. So this line, whether you're looking at it in text mode or block mode, I'm telling the JavaScript, hey, I want to create a variable. It's going to be my name, and it's going to hold this single value, which is the string Jose. So the problem is, and this slide kind of gets to this point, sometimes we need to hold, 10 pieces of information. Sometimes it's 100. Sometimes it's thousands of pieces of information for our app to work properly. So just imagine, right, you're trying to code an app for Temecula Valley High School, and they tell you that you need to, in your app, using a variable, store the first name of every student at the school, right? There's, I believe, almost 3,000 students at Temecula Valley High School. So you would be talking about creating 3,000 individual variables. And then maybe the purpose of the app is to return a count for every student, whose first name starts with C. So you would have to kind of create 3,000 variables. You would then have to write code to check all 3,000 variables individually to see if they're the string first name that you have stored to each variable starts with the letter C. That in and of itself would be a pretty large undertaking. But then you can imagine as maybe a student drops out. So now there's not 3,000 students, there's 2,999. So you have to go through your code and delete that one student that left. You have to delete that variable from your code every single place that you used it. Maybe 4 days later, 6 new students come to the school. So now you're looking at 3,005 students. Now you got to go and add 6 variables. And then go through your code and add that variable every single place that you were doing this check. That's not feasible, obviously. That's not how we do it. And that's kind of the problem that we're trying to address today is when we have a very large number of items that we need to look at and do something with. How do we do that using variables? And the answer is something that we call a list. Right, so a list is, we're going to look at it as another data type, right? So I've always said variables can only hold a single value. When I'm saying that, I'm basically saying they can hold, a single data type at a time. So if I create a variable, I can give it a string value, right? But that string is only going to be a single, list of characters. I can give that variable a number value, but that number at this time is just a single number, right? 10 or 15. I could give it a Boolean, so that value would be true or it could be false. So the nice thing about list is since lists are a data type, I can store a list to a variable, right? So if I was to ask the question, like, what type of data does this variable contain? You could tell me it contains a string, it contains an integer, it contains a Boolean, or it contains a list. Right, so if we're looking at this slide, we're kind of using that visual of the Ziploc baggies. The idea here is this is my variable, right? My large Ziploc, and I've written the variable name on here, lunch food. But those individual baggies, right? This is my list, right? And again, I can, because list is a data type, I can store this entire list to this variable, lunch food. Right? And hopefully you're kind of seeing where we're going with this. This list has multiple items within it. Right? We actually refer to these as elements. But I can add as many items or as many elements as I want to this list, and then that list, since it's its own data type, can get stored to lunch food. So inside lunch food, even though it only has one value, which is that one data type, that one list, that list can now store, tens or hundreds or thousands of pieces of information for us. And we have ways to get at that. So this, if you were in class, you would be actually doing this activity where you'd get with a group, you would come up with a list that you wanted to create. You would create your variable using a large Ziploc. Using the smaller Ziplocs, you would create all of the little elements that you need. Right, and you would basically create this list using these Ziplocs. So let's go over some terminology and how we refer to different parts of our list. So obviously this, books, that's our variable name. You guys should know what that is. You can see each item in our list. We're not going to call it an item, we're going to call it an element. Right? So your list is made up of elements. Each element gets its own index. Right? You don't have to worry about creating the index. JavaScript does that for you. What you need to know, the index is this 0 on the first element, 1 on the second, 1 on the second element, 2 on the third element. The index number will always start at 0, right? So your first element is always going to have index 0, and it's always going to count up from there. So your second element will always be index 1. Your third element will always be index 2. If I had, a fourth and fifth element, my fourth element would be index 3, my fifth element would be index 4. The third term that you need to know is length. All right, so for this element, I would say the length of my list is 3. Right? So kind of looking at the elements and the index and the length, don't get confused with this terminology. Just know like each item in your list is called an an element. Your elements will be labeled automatically by JavaScript with an index number. The first element's always going to be index 1, and it will just count up from there. And then the length is just how many elements you have in your list. All right, and kind of a nice thing to know about this, the length of your list will always be one more than your last index number. Right? So if I were to ask you like, hey, I have a list with a length of 6, what is the last index number? You should know it's 5, right? It's always one less. So just kind of hold on to those. We're going to keep talking about this. So this is just kind of showing you like the nice thing about this list is I can kind of fold up all of these different elements because it's one data type, and I can put all of that into this variable called books. All right, so now this books variable has all of that information stored in it. Going back to our example of students at Temecula Valley High School, I could create a list that had the first name of every student in there. Each one of those student names would be an element in my list. That list would automatically, by JavaScript, get index numbers assigned to each element. So the first student name would be index 0, the second one would be index 1, and so forth. So if there were 3,000 students, right, the length of my list would be 3,000. my last index number would be 2,999. All right, and I know this is a lot to take in. When we start doing this, between lessons 2, 3, and 4, it kind of will sink in for you. So this is really just to like introduce these concepts to you. So kind of getting into how we do this code-wise. If I wanted to create this list, so my list, right, with 2 elements, one is the string pizza, the second element is the number 4. I would use that var keyword telling the code I want to create a variable. I'm going to give my variable a name. In this case, it's my list. Then I'm going to use the assignment operator, just that equal sign. And then to the right of the equal sign is where I'm going to create my list. All right, so when you want to create a list, you have to put these square brackets around your entire list. Okay, so I'm going to start with the opening square bracket, and then I'm just going to create this comma-separated list of all the values that I want inside of it. All right, so in this case, I want the string pizza and the number 4, so I use my opening square bracket in quotes. I put pizza, close the quotes, and then the comma to tell the code, okay, now my second element, and then I'm going to put the number 4. All right, once I'm done creating my list, I just put the closing square bracket. They don't have the semicolon here, but you should have a semicolon. That will create your list. So now this variable, my list, has a list stored to it with these 2 elements inside that list. So if I wanted to access an item in my list, right? Maybe I want to know what is the value of the second element in my list. I know the second element in my list is going to have the index number 1. So to get that, I just need to type the name that the variable name that you stored your list to, and that in this case it's my list. And then in those square brackets, just put the index number that you want to get. All right, so in this case, I want to know the value of the second element in my list. I know the second element is index 1, so I say my list square bracket 1 closing square bracket. When this code runs, it will go to this variable and find index 1 and then return that value to you. All right, so if I said, hey, lunch food 0, right, it's going to go to this variable lunch food and find index 0, so it would return nachos. If I said lunch food 2, it's going to go to this variable lunch food and find the value at index 2, right, which is soup. So just kind of, expanding on what we've already done in using variables, we can do expressions with these variables that contain lists. We just need to make sure that we're not looking at the whole list, we're looking at a specific element in the list. So you got to have this square bracket with an index number to do this. But I have this list, my numbers. It has 3 elements, right? So my list length is 3. The indexes are 0, 1, and 2. So if I said 3 plus my numbers at index 1, that's going to go and find what's the value of my numbers at index 1, which is 20, and then replace this with that value. So it's really saying 3 plus 20 evaluates to 23. I could do it this way. My numbers at index 0 plus my numbers at index 2. Well, 0 is 10, 2 is 25, so 10 plus 25 evaluates to 35. So this is, if we want to update a value in our list. So maybe I create my list, right, my numbers, and by default, I'm saying to start, I want it to be first element, the value 10, second element, the value 20, third, the value 25. So that would look like this. But I want to change my numbers at index 0. So I want to change this 10. In this case, I'm just going to say, okay, my numbers at the index I want to change, set it equal to whatever number I want. In this case, 5. So that will throw out the 10, all right, the 10's gone, and replace it with 5. This line here, I'm saying, okay, now I want to go to my numbers at index 2, and I want to set it equal to 30. So it's going to go to index 2, get rid of that 25, and replace it with 30. Right? So we've kind of talked about how to create a list. We've talked about, how to get to a specific item within a list, or get to a specific element. And then now we've just talked about how to change an element in our list. So these are some examples. I'll let you run through these on your own if you want to pause the video. But they're just playing around with, here I'm creating my list using those square brackets. So I'm setting these initial values. Here I'm going to update the value at index 1 to cat. So this hat would change to cat. Right? It's not going to change any of these other values. It's just going to change the one that I wanted. Here it's saying, okay, go to index 2 and set it equal to whatever was at index 1, right? So index 1 started as hat. I changed it to cat, so now it would say 20 cat cat, right? And if you kind of keep going with this, 0, I want to change it to whatever's at 3, which is 5 plus 10. So 0 would become 15. And then I want to update 3, which started as 5, and I say, okay, it's going to be whatever's at 0 plus whatever's at 0. So 15 plus 15, that's where this 30 comes from. Here's another example, right? You can run through this one. But you should, kind of if you run through it in your head, get here. All right. So there are ways for us to change our list. So these, I'm not going to spend too much time on these in this video just because as we go through the individual lesson videos, we will practice with these methods. And that's where I'll go into more detail on what they do. But basically, remove item is just, if I've created a list and for some reason I don't want to change it, I don't need to get to it anymore, I just want to delete it out of there. I can use remove item. So when I do that, I need to give it two things. One is the name of the list that I want to remove something from, and the second argument is the index that I want to remove. So in this case, I have this variable, my numbers, and I'm creating my list with 3 elements, 10, 20, and 25. And then I'm saying, okay, I want to remove item. So I want to remove something from my numbers, and I want to remove index 1. So essentially I'm saying come in here and just delete this. I don't want this element anymore. So once you do that, it's going to update the list to look like this, right? Because I just deleted it. I deleted this 20. What's important to know is this index number for 25 changed to 1, right? Essentially when I delete this, it doesn't, do this, right? It's not like it's just going to come in here and delete this and leave this as index 2 all alone. It's going to shift this to the left, and in doing so, JavaScript will automatically redo your index numbers, which is why you're seeing once I remove that index 1, it takes the 25, shifts it to the left, and it's reordered my indexes number for me. The last one I'm saying, okay, now remove 0. All right, so it's going to delete this, shift the 25 to the left, and redo the index numbers. So I would just be left with this. The second one is append item. So this is when maybe you create your list and now you want to add some more items to your list, right? Append will add it to the end. And what you need to pass in is the name of the list that you want to add something to and the item that you want to add, right? The index number is not important here because it's automatically going to put it on the end for you. So I've created a variable, my numbers. Here's my list. It just has a single element with index 0 that has a value of 10. And then I say append item. So I want to append this to my numbers, and the value I'm going to give it is 50. So that will just add a new element to the end of my list, give it the value I want, and again, JavaScript handles the indexing for us, so because it's the last item, it's just going to get the next index number available to us, which is 1, because this one was 0. So you should know if I append another item to this one's going to have the value 100, it's just going to add it to the right of this 50 and then automatically give it the index number 2. Right? So we can remove items, we can append items, we can also insert items. So this is useful when I want to add something to my list, but I don't want it to just go on the end. Right? In this case, I'm trying to add it between the 10 and the 50. So this, again, you're going to use insert item. You need to tell the list that you want to change, the index number that you want this new item to go to, and then the value that you want to assign to this new item. So in this case, I'm creating this variable called numbers. It's going to store this list that has 10 and 50. So I've got this. I want to insert to my nums list at index 1 the number 20. So I'm saying, hey, put this in between these two and shift the 50 to the right, which is what you see here. And again, JavaScript has handled the indexing for us. You don't have to worry about that. So this inserted 20 into index 1 and then moved the 50 for us to the right and gave it index 2. So here I'm saying, okay, let's insert another item. Again, to this number list, I want this one to go to index 1. So I want it to come in here between, and I'm going to give it the value 100. All right, so when I do that, again, it shifts everything to the right, inserts that item, and then redoes our indexes for us. I'm not going to go into this too much, but I did want to show it to you. This is our list scrolling pattern. So one of the lessons that we go into today, or I shouldn't say today, but this week, is going to have you writing code to kind of move to the right and left within our list based on button click. So if you look at this code, we have an index. We started at 0, meaning I want to start by looking at the first item in my list because the first element in my list has index 0. And this is my list, right? So it's 3 strings, banana, apple, or pear. So I have 2 on events. One's for a left button, meaning I want to look at the item to the left of the one I'm currently looking at. And then a right button, meaning I want to look at the item to the right of the item that I'm currently looking at. And this is a pattern that you're going to use this a lot in this class. And it helps you scroll through these lists left to right, one element at a time based on the button click. So if you look at the left button, it's got this if statement where it says as long as index is greater than 0. The reason we do this is the smallest index number I can ever have is 0. That will always be the first item in my list. If I am currently looking at index 0 and I click the left button and I just subtract 1, 0 minus 1 is negative 1, so this is going to try to look at, element negative 1, which doesn't exist, right? The first element has an index of 0. There is no negative 1 index. So I'm just checking to make sure that I'm not currently looking at the first item in my list. As long as I'm not, I'm going to subtract 1 from index, and then I call update screen. Right? Update screen is just going to change the text to, again, this is my list, and I'm using the variable to tell me which element I want to access. So if I was currently looking at index 3, 3 is not less than 0, right? So it's going to subtract 1 from 3. So now I'm saying, okay, index is 2. So this would go to my list and look at this element with the index 2. Then I have my right button. This is going to let me look to the right one at a time. This line right here, what I'm checking to see is if my index is less than my list length minus 1. And this is where knowing those index numbers comes in handy, because if my list length is 3, I know the last index for the last element in my list is 2, because I start at 0, not 1. So as long as I'm not looking at the last element in my list, then I'm going to allow it to add 1 so I can go 1 to the right and see. If I am looking at the last element in my list, it's just not going to let me move to the right because I can't view an element that doesn't exist. But again, we're going to go into that more during the lessons this week. So that's pretty much it for this list lecture. The next videos that you watch are going to go through lessons 2, 3, and 4, where we're going to practice this, right? I know this is a lot to take in, especially just on a video, right? You're not in class with me kind of playing with these Ziplocs. So I would move on to lesson 2. We're going to go through this looking at code, and you can see at work that usually helps students kind of visualize this and understand what's going on. So as always, if you have questions, come by room 624 or shoot me an email.